I'm Joshua, 40 years old, and on Christmas night, my own mother looked my 9-year-old daughter in the eye and told her she wasn't welcome in our family home. But before I tell you about the chaotic, smelly, and absolutely glorious revenge that my Rottweiler, Bruno, took 30 minutes later, a revenge that left the local police officer trying to hide a smile, I need you to do me a favor. Go down to the comments right now and let me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. Now, let me take you back to the car ride that started it all. The heater in my Honda Pilot was blasting, but I couldn't stop shivering. It wasn't the temperature. It was that familiar, gnawing pit in my stomach that formed every time I drove towards Springfield. My knuckles were white as I gripped the steering wheel, navigating the icy roads leading out of Boston. In the back seat, my daughter, Lily, was humming Jingle Bells, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Next to her sat Bruno, our 110-pound Rottweiler. He was a big, goofy lug of a dog, resting his massive blocky head on Lily's lap. Every few miles, he'd let out a low whine, shifting uncomfortably. Dogs know. They always know when the vibe is off, and the vibe in that car was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Daddy, do you think Grandma made her pecan pie?" Lily asked, her voice cutting through the hum of the tires. "I made her a card. I drew a picture of her house." I looked at her in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were bright, filled with that innocent holiday anticipation that hadn't been crushed by reality yet. I forced a smile, though it felt tight and unnatural on my face. "I bet she did, sweetie," I lied. "And I'm sure she's going to love your card." The truth was, I wasn't sure of anything. My wife, Elena, wasn't with us. She's an ER doctor, and she had pulled the short straw for the holiday shift. When I told her I was planning to take Lily and Bruno to my parents' house for Christmas dinner, she had looked at me with that mixture of pity and frustration that I'd seen too often lately. "Joshua," she had said, adjusting her scrubs while sipping her morning coffee, "are you sure this is a good idea? After the phone call 2 weeks ago? You know how your father gets when he doesn't get his way." "It's Christmas, Elena," I had argued, trying to convince myself more than her. "They're getting old. I don't want to be the one who breaks the family apart. I want to be the bigger person. Besides, maybe if they see Lily, they'll remember what actually matters." Elena had sighed, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Just promise me you won't let them walk all over you this time. You have a family that loves you, Joshua. And it's right here in this house, not in Springfield." I should have listened to her. God, I should have listened. We were about 10 minutes away from my childhood home when the anxiety really kicked in. It's a strange thing, being a 40-year-old man, a successful software engineer who leads a team of 20 people, yet feeling like a scared little boy the moment you get within a 5-mile radius of your parents' house. My relationship with my family had always been transactional. That's the best word for it. I was the eldest son, the responsible one, the one who got good grades, got the scholarship, got the job, and stayed out of trouble. Then there was Caleb. Caleb, my younger brother by 4 years, the golden child. If I got an A, my parents expected it. If Caleb got a C-, they threw a party because he didn't fail. If I saved money from my paper route to buy a bike, I was told to be frugal. If Caleb wanted a bike, my parents bought him the most expensive one in the store, even if it meant they were late on the electric bill. Growing up, I thought if I just worked harder, if I was just more successful, they would finally look at me the way they looked at him. But the goalposts always moved. And 2 weeks ago, the goalposts hadn't just moved. They had been ripped out of the ground and thrown at my head. "Dad." Lily's voice pulled me back. "Bruno is drooling on my seatbelt." "Sorry, Lil. He's just nervous. We're almost there." I reached back and patted Bruno's flank. He licked my hand, his brown eyes wide and alert. He was more than a pet. We had adopted him 4 years ago from a shelter. He wasn't the smartest dog. He once got his head stuck in a cardboard box and walked into a wall, but his loyalty was fierce. He was part of our pack. I turned onto Oak Street. The houses here were older, the kind of suburban neighborhood where everyone knows everyone's business. I saw cars lining the street. My heart sank. Looks like the whole crew is there, I muttered. My parents had invited the extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. The vultures, as I secretly called them. These were people who only called me when their computers broke or when they needed advice on investments that usually turned out to be veiled requests for cash. I pulled my car up to the curb. It wasn't a flashy car, just a reliable SUV. I could afford better. Elena and I did very well for ourselves, but we believed in living below our means. We prioritized our retirement accounts, Lily's college fund, and experiences over showing off. My brother Caleb, on the other hand, drove a leased luxury sedan that cost more than his annual salary. I scanned the driveway. There it was. A brand new, shiny black pickup truck. Lifted. Custom rims. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Caleb had told me 3 months ago he couldn't afford rent. Yet there was a $60,000 truck sitting in the driveway. Okay, I exhaled, turning off the ignition. Game face, Joshua. I turned to Lily. Listen, honey. Grandma and Grandpa might be a little stressed today. If they say anything weird, just ignore it. Okay? Stick with me and Bruno. Okay, Dad, she chirped, grabbing her homemade card. I got out and leashed Bruno. The cold air hit my face, biting and sharp. It was already dark, the Christmas lights on the neighbors' houses twinkling merrily. But my parents' house was different. Yes, there were lights, but they looked aggressive, too bright, flashing too fast. We walked up the driveway. The gravel crunched loudly under my boots. I could hear laughter and music coming from inside. Sounded warm. It sounded like the Christmas I wanted for my daughter. Bruno growled low in his throat. Hush, boy, I whispered, tugging the leash. Be nice. But Bruno's hackles were raised. He stopped halfway up the walk, staring at the front door. He didn't want to go in. Come on, Bruno, Lily coaxed, pulling on his collar. Grandma has turkey. I took a deep breath, adjusted my coat, and stepped onto the porch. I could see shadows moving behind the frosted glass of the front door. I recognized the silhouette of my mother, her hair done up in that stiff, high style she wore for parties. I rang the doorbell. The laughter inside didn't stop, but the movement near the door did. I heard the lock click. I put on my best smile, the smile of a dutiful son, the smile of a man trying to build a bridge over a river of toxic sludge. The door swung open. It wasn't a warm welcome. The heat from the house rushed out, smelling of roasted meat and cinnamon. But the look on my mother's face froze me instantly. She didn't smile. She didn't open the screen door. She just stood there, wiping her hands on an apron that said World's Best Grandma. Joshua, she said. Her tone wasn't surprised. It was disappointed. Merry Christmas, Mom, I said, my voice cracking slightly. We brought gifts. I held up a bag. Lily stepped forward, beaming, holding out her card. Merry Christmas, Grandma. I drew you. Mom didn't even look at the card. Her eyes flicked from me to Lily and then down to Bruno. Her lip curled in disgust. You brought the beast, she spat. He's family, Mom. You know that. And we can keep him in the yard if... We are eating, she interrupted, her voice rising so the people inside could hear. We are having a family dinner. I know, I said, confused. That's why we're here, to have dinner with family. She laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Family? You think you can just show up here after what you did? After you abandoned your brother? Behind her, the conversation in the living room died down. Heads started to peek around the corner. I saw my Uncle Thomas holding a beer. I saw my cousin Ryan. They were watching us like it was a reality TV show. Mom, let's not do this on the porch, I pleaded, glancing at Lily. Her smile was faltering. She sensed the hostility. Let's just come in, have a meal and... No, she said loud and sharp. She took a step forward, pushing the screen door open just enough to point a manicured finger at my chest. You made your choice, Joshua. You chose your money over your blood. I felt the blood drain from my face. Mom, please. Lily is right here. She looked down at Lily. And this is the moment that haunts me. This is the moment I realized that the woman standing in front of me wasn't just a flawed mother. She was a monster. She looked at my beautiful 9-year-old daughter, whose eyes were filling with tears, and her expression didn't soften. It hardened. Time seemed to slow down. I stood there on the porch, the festive wreath on the door mocking me with its cheerful red bough. The cold wind bit at my ears, but I barely felt it. All I could feel was the intense, suffocating weight of history crashing down on me. It wasn't just about tonight. It never is. While my mother stared at us with that cold, dead look, my mind flashed back to exactly 2 weeks ago. The phone call. I was in my home office reviewing code for a major project launch. My phone rang. Mom. I had answered on the second ring. Hey, Mom. Everything okay? Your brother needs help, she had said, skipping the hello. What happened? Is he hurt? Panic had spiked in my chest. His business. The investment. It didn't work out. The bank is threatening to take his house, Joshua. He has 30 days. I had sighed, rubbing my temples. Caleb's business was a series of get-rich-quick schemes that usually involved multi-level marketing or flipping houses he didn't know how to fix. How much does he need, Mom? I asked, expecting the usual answer. 2,000? 5,000? 500,000, she said. I nearly dropped the phone. What? $500,000? Mom, are you insane? Don't speak to me like that, she snapped. He made some mistakes. He borrowed from some private lenders. The interest, it piled up. But you have it. We know you have it. I don't keep $500,000 in cash lying around, Mom. Elena does, she countered. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. We heard about her inheritance. Her grandmother passed away last month. Everyone knows the old lady was loaded. I went cold. Elena's grandmother had passed, yes. It was a tragedy. She had left Elena a significant sum, closer to 10 million, tied up in trusts and assets. It was money meant for our future, for Lily, for the life Elena's grandmother wanted for her. It wasn't a slush fund for my brother's gambling debts or failed businesses. That is Elena's money, I said, my voice firm. Not mine, and certainly not Caleb's. You are married, my mother screamed. What is hers is yours. How can you be so selfish? Your brother is going to lose his roof. He has a child. He has a truck worth more than my car. I shot back. He goes on vacations to Cabo while I'm working 60-hour weeks. No, Mom. The answer is no. If you don't help him, she had threatened, her voice turning into ice. You are dead to me. I had hung up. I thought she was bluffing. I thought she was just emotional. Standing on the porch now, looking at her face, I realized she wasn't bluffing. Grandma. Lily's voice trembled, pulling me out of the memory. She held the card out again, her hand shaking. I made this for you. My mother looked at the card like it was a contagious disease. Get out, she said. The words hung in the air. Simple. Brutal. What? I whispered. Get out, she screamed. We don't welcome you and your dad here. Lily flinched as if she'd been slapped. She dropped the card. It fluttered to the porch floor, landing face down on the welcome mat that said home sweet home. Grandma, what did I do wrong? Lily sobbed, tears spilling over her cheeks. Why are you sending me away? Any decent human being would have broken then. Any grandmother with a shred of soul would have dropped to her knees and hugged that child. But Margaret, I couldn't even call her mom in my head anymore. Just sneered. Don't call me grandma. My son died the day he refused to help his little brother. And his spawn is no kin of mine. Something inside me snapped. A cable that had been holding back 40 years of resentment just sheared in half. Don't call me Mom, she continued, her voice rising to a shriek. You are a stranger. A greedy, selfish stranger. How dare you? I growled. My voice was low, shaking with a rage I didn't know I possessed. Say what you want about me, but you do not speak to my daughter that way. I speak how I want in my house, she yelled back. Suddenly, the door was yanked fully open. My father, Robert, stepped out. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a face that was permanently red from high blood pressure and whiskey. He didn't look at me. He looked at the audience gathering behind him in the hallway. "What is this racket?" he bellowed, though he knew exactly what it was. "He's trying to force his way in." "Robert," my mother lied, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He brought that beast dog to threaten us." Bruno wasn't threatening anyone. He was pressed against my leg, whining, sensing the aggression. He was a protector, yes, but he was confused. "Dad," I said, trying one last time to appeal to reason. "We just drove 2 hours. It's Christmas. Can we please just—" "You have some nerve," my father interrupted, stepping onto the porch. He towered over me. "Showing your face here." The crowd of relatives spilled out now. About 10 of them. Uncle Thomas, Aunt Martha, Cousin Ryan, even my brother's wife, Sarah. They formed a semicircle behind my parents, arms crossed, faces grim. It looked like a tribunal. "Look at him," my father announced to the group, gesturing at me like I was a circus exhibit. "The traitor. The man who sits on a pile of gold while his own flesh and blood faces ruin." "Dad, stop," I said, my hands balling into fists. "You don't know the whole story." "I know enough," he roared. "I know your wife got $10 million. $10 million. And you wouldn't spare $500,000 to save your brother's home? To save the family legacy." "Legacy?" I laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. "What legacy, Dad? The legacy of enabling Caleb? The legacy of taking from me to give to him." I saw movement in the back of the group. It was Caleb, the golden child. He pushed his way through the relatives. He was wearing a cashmere sweater and holding a glass of expensive scotch. He didn't look ruined. He looked comfortable. He looked smug. He stood next to Dad, leaning against the doorframe. He looked me up and down, smiling that smirk that used to make me want to punch a wall when we were teenagers. "Hey, Josh," Caleb said, his voice dripping with fake pity. "Rough night. I pointed at him. "You did this. You lied to them." "I didn't lie about anything," Caleb shrugged. "I just told them you didn't care. That you were too busy counting your wife's money to help family." "It's not my money, Caleb. And it's sure as hell not yours. It's family money," my father shouted. "When you marry, you become one. Her assets are our assets. That is how a family works." I looked around at the faces of my relatives. The vultures. Uncle Thomas shook his head at me, taking a sip of his beer. "That's cold, Joshua," Thomas muttered. "Turning your back on your brother. I thought we raised you better." "Yeah," Cousin Ryan chimed in. "Real selfish, man. People out here struggling and you're hoarding millions." I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. These people, who I had helped fix cars for, who I had loaned money to for emergencies that never got paid back, were judging me? I looked down at Lily. She was shaking, burying her face in my coat. "Daddy, I want to go home," she whispered. "Please." "We're going, baby," I said, stroking her hair. "We're going right now." I turned to leave. I was done. I was going to walk away and never look back. But then my father opened his mouth again. And he made the biggest mistake of his life. "Jack, stop." Dad's voice boomed like thunder across the front lawn. I froze. Every instinct in my body told me to keep walking, to get Lily in the car and speed away until Springfield was a speck in my rearview mirror. But the conditioning of a lifetime is hard to break. When your father commands you to stop, you stop. I turned around slowly. My hand gripped the leash so tight my knuckles ached. Bruno was now standing rigidly, his body tense, a low rumble vibrating in his chest that I could feel through the leather strap. "What?" I asked. "You told us to get out. We're getting out." Dad stepped down from the porch, moving into my personal space. The porch light cast long, distorted shadows across his face. The crowd of relatives shuffled forward to the edge of the steps, eager for the show. They were like spectators at a gladiator match, waiting for blood. "You think you can just walk away?" Dad sneered. "After the shame you brought on this family?" "Shame?" I stepped closer to him, narrowing the gap. The only shame here is how you treat your granddaughter. Don't you use her as a shield? Dad spat, glancing at Lily with disdain. This is about you. You and your greed. You're a traitor, Joshua. A traitor to your blood. Why? Because I won't fund Caleb's lifestyle? I gestured to the shiny truck in the driveway. Look at that truck, Dad. Look at it. He drives a $60,000 truck while begging for money. Does that look like someone who's about to be homeless? Dad didn't even look at the truck. He was blind to anything Caleb did. He needs that truck for work. Appearance matters in business. He doesn't have a business, I shouted. He has a pyramid scheme and a gambling problem. Shut your mouth, Caleb yelled from the porch, his composure slipping for a second. You don't know anything about my business. I know you asked me for $8,000 for your wedding in 2016 and never paid it back. I yelled back, locking eyes with him. The crowd went silent. I know you borrowed $3,000 when your son was born because you forgot your wallet at the hospital. I continued, my voice gaining strength. I know you took $15,000 from Elena during the pandemic for living expenses while you were posting pictures of new golf clubs on Instagram. Caleb's face turned a shade of pale that matched the porch railing. You're lying. I never borrowed that much. I have the receipts, Caleb. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up like a weapon. I have the texts. I have the bank transfers. I have the emails where you promised to pay me back as soon as the big deal closes. It's been 7 years, Caleb. Where is the deal? He's making it up. Sarah, Caleb's wife, screeched. She pushed her way to the front, her face twisted in ugly anger. We never borrowed money from you. You're just jealous because Caleb is the favorite. Jealous. I laughed, but it sounded more like a bark. Jealous of what? Being a parasite. Watch your mouth. Dad shoved me. It wasn't a hard shove, but it was enough to make me stumble back a step. Bruno roared. It wasn't a growl anymore. It was a full-throated, protective bark that shook the air. He lunged to the end of the leash, snapping his jaws inches from my father's leg. Control that animal. Mom shrieked from the doorway. Call the police. He's attacking us. He's protecting me, I yelled, pulling Bruno back and holding him by the collar. Which is more than you've ever done. I looked at the relatives. Uncle Thomas was looking at his shoes. Aunt Martha was whispering to Cousin Ryan. You all stand there and judge me, I said, addressing the crowd. Uncle Thomas, remember when your roof leaked last winter? Who paid for the contractor? Was it Caleb? Thomas didn't answer. He took a long sip of his beer. Cousin Ryan, I pivoted to him. Who co-signed your car loan when your credit was shot? Was it the golden child standing there with the scotch? Ryan looked away, muttering something under his breath. You're all a bunch of hypocrites, I said, feeling a strange sense of power rising. You call me family when you need a check written. But the moment I say no to being robbed, I'm the traitor. It's not robbery, Dad yelled, trying to regain control of the narrative. It's redistribution. You have too much. Your wife has millions. Why are you so stingy? 500,000 is nothing to you. It's everything when it's being thrown into a black hole, I countered. And let's be clear, it's not my money. It's Elena's inheritance. And even if it were mine, I wouldn't give it to you. Not after today. Then you are no son of mine, Dad said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. If you walk away now, don't you ever come back. You are cut off. No inheritance for you. I almost laughed. Inheritance? Dad, you guys have refinanced this house 3 times. You have nothing to inherit. I'm the one sending you money for your prescriptions every month. That hit a nerve. Dad's face turned purple. You ungrateful brat. Just then, a small voice piped up from the back of the crowd. It was Aunt Clara, my mother's younger sister. She was the quiet one, the one who always sat in the corner at parties. He's right, Robert, Clara said, her voice shaking but audible. Everyone turned to stare at her. My mother looked like she was about to explode. "Shut up, Clara." "No." Clara stepped forward, wringing her hands. "Joshua paid for my cataract surgery last year. He didn't tell anyone. He just did it. And I know for a fact he paid off Caleb's credit card debt 3 years ago because Sarah told me." "You liar!" Sarah screamed, lunging toward Clara. "I never said that." "You did," Clara insisted, tears forming in her eyes. "You bragged about how easy it was to get money out of him." "Enough!" Mom screamed. "Get back inside, Clara. You are senile." She turned her gaze back to me. The hatred in her eyes was absolute. She knew they were losing the argument. The facts were out. The vultures were starting to look uncomfortable. The narrative of me being the bad guy was crumbling. So she did the only thing she knew how to do. She aimed for the weakest target. She looked at Lily, who was clinging to my leg, terrified by the screaming. "Look at her," Mom sneered, pointing at my daughter. "Crying like a baby. Weak, just like her father. Raising a spoiled brat who thinks the world owes her a living." "She's 9, I shouted. "She's useless," Mom said. "Whatever. Take her and go. You're not my only granddaughter anyway. Caleb's wife is pregnant with a boy. A real heir. We don't need you or your girl." The world stopped. I heard the wind rustling the dead leaves in the oak tree. I heard the distant sirens of the city. I heard my own heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. A boy. They were replacing me. They were replacing Lily. Lily looked up at me, her eyes wide. "Daddy? Grandma doesn't love me?" That question broke me. It shattered the last remaining piece of restraint I had. But before I could do anything, before I could scream, before I could charge up those stairs and do something I'd regret, Bruno decided he had heard enough. The leash burned through my palm as it ripped free. I didn't let go on purpose. But when 110 pounds of muscle decides to move with explosive force, physics takes over. 1 second, I was holding the leather strap. The next, my hand was empty, and a black and tan missile was launching itself toward the porch. "Bruno, no!" I screamed, lunging forward. But it was too late. The relatives scattered like bowling pins. Uncle Thomas dropped his beer, the glass shattering on the concrete. Cousin Ryan actually vaulted over the porch railing into the bushes. Sarah shrieked and hid behind Caleb, who looked like he was about to faint. Bruno didn't attack them. He didn't bite. He ignored my father, who was cowering against the wall with his hands up. He ignored my mother, who was frozen in terror. Bruno had a target, but it wasn't a person. He shot through the open front door, his claws scrambling for traction on the polished hardwood floor of the entryway. "The food!" my mother screamed, her paralysis breaking. "Stop him. He's going for the dining room." I ran up the stairs, pushing past my stunned father. "Bruno, come here." I burst into the house, the warm air and smell of food hitting me instantly. The scene before me was like something out of a slow-motion disaster movie. The dining room was magnificent. My mother had outdone herself. The long mahogany table was set for 20 people. Crystal wine glasses sparkled under the chandelier. Silverware gleamed, and in the center, sitting on a massive silver platter, was the piece de resistance. A 20-pound, golden brown roasted turkey, glistening with juices. Bruno didn't hesitate. He leaped. It was majestic in a horrific sort of way. He cleared the back of a chair and landed squarely in the middle of the table. Crash. The table shook. Plates jumped. Wine glasses tipped over, sending rivers of red Merlot cascading across the pristine white lace tablecloth. Bruno buried his face in the turkey. "No!" My mother stood in the doorway, clutching her chest. "My turkey! My centerpiece!" Bruno tore a massive chunk of meat from the bird, shaking his head side to side like he was taking down a gazelle on the Serengeti. "Gravy boat? Gone." He kicked it over with his hind leg, sending hot brown sludge splashing onto the expensive upholstered chairs. "Get him off! Get him off!" Caleb yelled from behind me, but he didn't dare step into the room. "I'm trying," I yelled, though a small, dark part of my soul was cheering. I grabbed Bruno's collar. He was growling, a deep, possessive sound, as he chewed. He was in ecstasy. This was the best Christmas dinner he'd ever had. "Drop it, Bruno. Drop it," I commanded, pulling with all my weight. He ignored me. He took another bite, this time grabbing the stuffing that spilled out of the bird. He stepped forward, his paw landing squarely in a bowl of mashed potatoes. Squish. White fluff exploded everywhere. "Oh my God," Sarah wailed. "Everything is ruined. The Instagram photos. Is that what you care about?" I yelled back over my shoulder, struggling with the dog. "The photos?" Bruno shook himself, sending droplets of gravy and wine flying like confetti. A glob of cranberry sauce landed on my father's forehead as he peeked into the room. "You will pay for this," Dad roared, wiping the red goop from his face. "You will pay for every single cent. That crystal is Waterford. That china is antique. Add it to the bill," I shouted, finally managing to drag Bruno's head away from the carcass of the turkey. "Put it on Caleb's tab." Bruno wasn't done. He was frantic, trying to eat as much as possible before the fun ended. He swiped a paw at a platter of dinner rolls, sending them flying like baseballs. One hit Aunt Martha in the shoulder as she tried to enter the room. The noise was deafening. The barking, the screaming, the shattering of glass. And then suddenly Bruno stopped. He stood still on the table right at the head, where my mother always sat. The Queen's seat, the place of honor. He looked around the room, panting. He looked at me. He looked at my mother, who was weeping openly now, staring at her destroyed feast. "He's stopping," Caleb said, stepping forward cautiously. "Grab him now." "Wait," I said. I knew that look. I knew that posture. Bruno arched his back. He squatted slightly. "No," my mother whispered. "No, no, no. Bruno, don't you dare," I warned, reaching for him. But nature calls when it calls. And perhaps, just perhaps, dogs understand more about poetic justice than we give them credit for. Right there, on my mother's favorite serving plate, the one with the gold rim that had been in the family for 3 generations, the one she claimed was too good for Lily to touch. Bruno let it go. It wasn't just a little accident. It was a massive, steaming pile of revenge. The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear a pin drop, or in this case, a very large biological deposit landing on fine china. Bruno finished. He kicked his back legs a little, scratching the table surface, as if to cover his tracks. Then he hopped down from the table, trotted over to me, sat down, and looked up with a happy, gravy-covered face. "Bark, you monster," my mother whispered, her face pale as a ghost. She looked like she was going to faint. "Oh my God," Sarah gagged, covering her nose. "The smell. Call the police," Dad screamed, his veins bulging in his neck. "I want him arrested. I want that dog put down. I want my son in jail. I'm calling them." Caleb pulled out his phone, his hands shaking. "This is destruction of property. This is assault." I stood there, holding Bruno's collar. My coat was splattered with wine. My boots were sticky with mashed potatoes. The room smelled of roasted turkey, expensive perfume, and fresh dog poop. And I started to laugh. Couldn't help it. It started as a chuckle, deep in my chest, and bubbled up into a full-blown belly laugh. "You think this is funny?" Mom screeched, looking at me with pure hatred. "Yeah," I gasped, wiping a tear from my eye. "Yeah, Mom, kind of is. You wanted to treat us like dirt? Well, now you have dirt on your plate. Bon appetit." "You are insane," Caleb said, dialing 911. "Hello? Yes? I need police at 42 Oak Street immediately. My brother, his dog. It's a hostage situation. He's crazy." "Hostage situation?" I looked at him incredulously. "Really, Caleb? You're not leaving." Dad stood in the doorway, blocking the exit. He grabbed a heavy brass candlestick from the sideboard. "You're staying right here until the cops come. You're going to pay for this." "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my laughter fading into a cold calm. I'll wait for the police, because I have a few things to tell them, too. I looked down at Lily, who was standing in the hallway, peeking in. Her eyes were wide, but she wasn't crying anymore. She was looking at the table. Then she looked at me, and a tiny, mischievous smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Good boy, Bruno," she whispered. The 20 minutes waiting for the police were the longest of my life. The vultures had retreated to the living room, whispering furiously. My mother sat in a kitchen chair, staring blankly at the wall, refusing to look at the dining room. My father paced back and forth, guarding the front door like a prison warden, muttering about lawsuits and damages. Caleb and Sarah were in the corner, arguing in hushed tones. "We can't let them look at the financial records," I heard Sarah hiss. "Shut up," Caleb snapped back. "Just focus on the dog." I stood in the hallway with Lily and Bruno. I had used some napkins to wipe the gravy off Bruno's face. He was currently napping on the rug, completely unbothered by the chaos he caused. Finally, flashing blue lights washed over the living room walls. "They're here," Dad announced triumphantly. He threw the door open before the officer could even knock. "Officer, arrest him. Arrest that man and his vicious beast." 2 officers walked in. One was a young rookie who looked overwhelmed. The other was an older man, gray-haired, with a name tag that read Sergeant Miller. I recognized him. He had been the coach of my little league team 30 years ago. "Robert, calm down," Sergeant Miller said, stepping into the foyer. "Nobody is getting arrested until I figure out what the hell is going on. We got a call about a hostage situation." "He terrorized us," Mom shouted, coming to life. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "He set that animal on us. It destroyed everything. Tens of thousands of dollars in damage." Miller looked at me, then down at Bruno, who was thumping his tail on the floor. "That the animal?" Miller asked. "Yes, it's a killer," Sarah chimed in. "Hey, Coach Miller," I said, raising my hands. "Long time no see." Miller squinted at me. "Joshua? Joshua Evans. That's me." "He's a criminal," Dad interrupted. "Look at the dining room. Just look at it." Miller sighed and walked into the dining room. The rookie followed. I heard a sharp intake of breath, followed by a cough that sounded suspiciously like a suppressed laugh. Miller walked back out a moment later. His face was stoic, but his eyes were dancing. "Well," Miller said, clearing his throat, "that is quite a mess. And the dog definitely left his mark on the plate." "I want to press charges," Dad demanded. "Destruction of property, emotional distress, assault with a deadly weapon." "Technically," Miller drawled, pulling out a notepad, "it's a civil matter regarding property damage, unless the dog actually bit someone." "He tried to," Caleb lied. "He lunged at me." "Did he make contact?" Miller asked. "No, but..." "Then it's not a bite case." Miller cut him off. He turned to me. "Joshua, why is your dog eating the Christmas turkey?" "Because they kicked us out, officer," I said clearly. "My mother told my 9-year-old daughter to get out, and that she wasn't welcome. When we tried to leave, my father blocked us and started screaming. The dog got spooked and ran inside." "Liar!" Mom screamed. "We never..." "I have it on video," a voice said. Everyone turned. It was Mrs. Higgins, the next-door neighbor. She was standing in the open doorway, clutching her phone in a fuzzy pink bathrobe. "I heard the screaming," Mrs. Higgins said, adjusting her glasses. "I came out to check. I recorded the whole thing from my porch. Margaret, I heard you tell that little girl she wasn't your only granddaughter. Shame on you." My mother's face went from pale to beet red. "You stay out of this, Gladys," Dad yelled. "And," Mrs. Higgins continued, holding the phone up to Officer Miller, "I heard the part where Robert admitted to demanding money from Joshua." Miller took the phone. He watched the video for a few seconds. He looked up at my parents. The look of disappointment on his face was worse than any anger. "Robert, Margaret," Miller said quietly, "it's Christmas. You're fighting over money? It's family money. Dad insisted, but his voice lacked its usual power. He owes us. We are losing the house because of him. Wait, I said, stepping forward. What did you say? Dad froze. He realized he had said too much. What do you mean you're losing the house? I asked, looking from Dad to Caleb. I thought it was Caleb's house that was in trouble. Silence. Caleb looked at the floor. Sarah started chewing her lip. Robert, Mom hissed. Shut up. No, I said, the pieces finally clicking together in my brain. The desperation, the aggression, the sheer panic over the $500,000. It's not Caleb's house, is it? It's this house. We co-signed, Sarah blurted out. She couldn't hold it in. They co-signed for Caleb's business loan, and he put this house up as collateral. Sarah, Caleb roared. I don't care. Sarah screamed back, tears streaming down her face. It's over, Caleb. They need to know. If we don't pay the bank by January 15th, they take everything. This house, our house, the cars. Everything. I stared at my parents. They stood there, stripped of their pride, stripped of their lies. You bet your house? I whispered. Your paid-off house? On one of Caleb's schemes. It was a sure thing, Dad mumbled, looking defeated. Crypto mining. He said it was a sure thing. Crypto mining? I looked at Caleb. You gambled their house on crypto? It crashed. Caleb defended himself weakly. It wasn't my fault. And you wanted me to fix it? I said, my voice cold. You wanted me to take Elena's inheritance. Money her grandmother worked 50 years for, and throw it into the pit of your stupidity. We are family, Mom sobbed. You have to help us. You can't let us be homeless. I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the fear in their eyes, yes, but I also saw the entitlement. Even now, after everything, they didn't ask for forgiveness. They demanded a bailout. They didn't care about me. They didn't care about Lily. They only cared about the checkbook. I looked at the dining room, where Bruno's artwork was still steaming on the plate. It was a perfect metaphor for this family. A fancy exterior hiding a pile of crap. No, I said. What? Mom whispered. No, I repeated louder. I won't help you. I won't give you a dime. You can't do that. Dad stepped forward, raising a fist. Officer Miller stepped between us, his hand resting on his taser. Robert, back off. Joshua, please, Caleb begged, grabbing my arm. I'll go to jail. There was fraud involved. I fudged the numbers on the application. If the bank forecloses, they'll investigate. They'll find out. I pulled my arm away as if he were burning me. Then you better start looking for a good lawyer, I said, because I'm not paying for that either. I turned to Officer Miller. Officer, write me the ticket, I said calmly. I'll pay for the damage my dog caused. I'll pay for the turkey, the plates, the rug cleaning, whatever it costs. Joshua, Miller started. Just write it, I insisted. I want everything documented. I want a paper trail that says I paid my debt to this family, so that when I walk out that door, I owe them absolutely nothing. Miller nodded slowly. He pulled out his ticket book. It's going to be steep, he warned. Civil infraction, destruction of property, probably a few thousand. Worth every penny, I said. I looked at my parents one last time. They looked small, shrunken. The power they had held over me for 40 years, the guilt, the obligation, the fear had evaporated. You have 30 days, I told Caleb. I suggest you sell that truck, and the boat, and maybe start selling your plasma, because the Bank of Joshua is closed. Permanently. I knelt down and hugged Lily. She hugged me back, burying her face in my neck. Come on, kiddo, I said. Let's go home. Mom ordered Chinese food. And pizza? Lily asked hopeful. And pizza, I promised. As I stood up, I looked directly into the camera. Mrs. Higgins' phone, and in my mind, the eyes of everyone watching this story. This is the moment that changed everything. The moment I finally took back control of my life. I stood there in the ruins of Christmas dinner, holding a ticket for $3,400, and I felt lighter than I had in decades. Thank you for being patient and sticking with me this far. You guys are amazing. Please, hit that like button and comment the number 1 below so I know you're still here with me. It helps more people find this story, but more importantly, it tells me that I'm not alone, that standing up for yourself matters. Your support is the fuel that keeps me going. Now, let me tell you what happened when the dust finally settled. The ride home was quiet, but it wasn't the tense silence of the drive there. It was the peaceful silence of a battlefield after the guns have fallen silent. I had the ticket tucked in my pocket. $3,400. That was the official tally Officer Miller had come up with, factoring in the antique china, which turned out to be replicas, by the way, but I didn't argue, and the cleaning fees. I paid it on the spot. I wrote a check, handed it to my father, and watched his hands shake as he took it. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say goodbye. He just stared at the check, likely calculating how many days of interest it would cover on the massive debt they were drowning in. As we pulled out of the driveway, I saw them standing in the window. My mother, father, Caleb, and Sarah. Portrait of misery. They looked like ghosts haunting a house that didn't belong to them anymore. "Daddy?" Lily asked from the back seat. She was sharing a bag of beef jerky with Bruno. "Yeah, honey? Is Bruno a bad boy?" I looked in the rearview mirror. Bruno was happily chewing, completely unaware of the legal drama he had just participated in. "No, sweetie," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "Bruno is a very, very good boy. He just has a unique way of expressing his opinion." "I think he didn't like Grandma," Lily said matter-of-factly. "I think you're right." I reached for my phone and dialed Elena. She answered on the first ring. "Joshua? I've been worried sick. You've been gone for hours. How did it go?" I took a deep breath. "Well, let's just say we won't be going back for Easter." "Oh no," she sighed. "Did they make a scene?" "They made a scene. Dad demanded the inheritance. Mom told Lily to get out." "She what?" Elena's voice went sharp. "She said that to Lily?" "Yeah, but don't worry. Bruno handled it." "Bruno? What did he do? Did he bark at them?" "Better," I chuckled. "He ate the turkey. All of it. And the mashed potatoes. And then, well, he left a present on Mom's antique dinner plate. The gold-rimmed one." There was a pause on the line. Then I heard it. A snort. Then a giggle. Then full-blown hysterical laughter. He pooped on the plate?" Elena gasped, struggling to breathe. Dead center. A masterpiece. Elena was laughing so hard she was crying. "Oh my God. Oh my God. I love that dog. I am cooking him a steak when you get home. A filet mignon. He deserves it." I agreed. "Elena," they admitted it. They co-signed for Caleb. They're losing the house. They wanted your money to stop the foreclosure. The laughter stopped instantly. "They bet their house?" "Yeah. And I told them no. I cut them off, Elena. For good. I told them I'm done." "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "I know how hard that was." "It was," I admitted, feeling tears prick my eyes again. But looking at Lily, knowing they would throw her aside for Caleb, it made it easy. "Come home," she said. "I'm leaving the hospital now. I'll beat you there. We'll have our own Christmas." "We're on our way." I hung up and looked at the road ahead. The snow had stopped. The sky was clearing, revealing a few stars. I thought about the check I had written. $3,400. A lot of money for a dinner we didn't eat. But as I drove away from the toxic swamp that was my childhood home, I realized it was the cheapest price I had ever paid for freedom. I had spent 40 years trying to buy their love with good grades, with obedience, with loans, with silence. And tonight, for the price of a destroyed turkey and a rug cleaning bill, I had bought something much more valuable. My dignity. And the look on my mother's face when Bruno climbed onto the table, that was priceless. The 3 days following Christmas were surreal. It was like living in the eye of a hurricane. The storm had passed, destroying the landscape of my past, but the air around me felt strangely still. Elena, Lily, and I stayed home. We turned off our phones. We ordered takeout. We watched movies. We built a blanket fort in the living room that would have made an architect jealous. For the first time in years, I wasn't dreading a phone call. I wasn't checking my bank account to see if a transfer had gone through to help Caleb. I felt lighter, but I knew it wasn't over. You don't topple a 40-year-old regime without a final counterattack. It happened on December 28th, around 7 p.m. It was a Tuesday. The snow had started up again, blanketing our driveway in a fresh coat of white. We were in the kitchen making hot chocolate. Elena was laughing at something Lily said, and Bruno was snoring loudly by the back door. Then, the motion sensor light on the garage flooded the driveway. I glanced at the security monitor mounted on the kitchen wall. My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with a cold, hard resolve. 2 cars. My father's Buick and Caleb's massive, obnoxious truck. "They're here," I said quietly. Elena stopped stirring the cocoa. Her face hardened. "Do you want me to call the police?" "No," I said, walking over to the window. "Not yet. I want to handle this." "I'm coming with you," she said, reaching for her coat. "No, stay with Lily. I don't want her to see them." I looked down at Bruno. He had lifted his head, his ears perked up. A low growl started in his throat, vibrating through the floorboards. "But I will take backup." I clipped the leash onto Bruno's collar. "Ready, boy?" He stood up, shaking off his nap. He knew. I walked to the front door, switched on the porch light, and stepped out. I didn't walk down the driveway. I stood right there on the top step, crossing my arms. Bruno sat next to me, a silent, black and tan sentinel. My father was the first to get out. He looked older than he had 3 days ago. His shoulders were slumped, his face gray in the harsh LED light. My mother stayed in the car, refusing to look at me. Caleb jumped out of his truck, slamming the door. Sarah was with him, looking nervous. They walked up the driveway, but they stopped about 20 feet away. Bruno let out a single, sharp bark. It wasn't aggressive, just a warning. "This is my territory." "Joshua," my father said. His voice was hoarse. "Robert," I replied. I didn't call him Dad. Couldn't. "We need to talk," he said, shifting his weight. "We need to settle this." "I thought we settled it," I said, my breath pluming in the cold air. "I paid the ticket. I paid for the damage. We have nothing left to discuss." "Don't be like that," Caleb said, stepping forward. He tried to put on his usual charm, that smile that used to get him out of everything. "Look, bro. It was a crazy night. Tempers flared. We're all stressed." "I'm not stressed," I said calmly. "I'm actually feeling pretty great." "We're willing to forgive you," Caleb said. I actually laughed. It echoed in the quiet neighborhood. "You? Forgive me? For what?" "For not letting you rob me." "For the humiliation," Sarah shouted from behind Caleb. "For the dog thing. Do you know how hard it is to get that smell out of a rug?" "We are willing to let it go," Dad interrupted, trying to regain control. "We are willing to move past this incident. We are family, Joshua. Families fight, but they forgive." "Cut the crap," I said, my voice turning to steel. "Why are you here?" "Really?" Dad looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at his boots. "The bank called today," Dad whispered. "They're moving up the timeline. They found some irregularities in Caleb's loan application." "Fraud," I corrected him. "They found fraud. If we don't come up with a significant payment by the 1st of the month," Dad continued, ignoring my comment, "they're going to freeze everything. They're going to take the house, Joshua. The house you grew up in." "And?" I asked. "And we need the money," Dad said, his voice rising in desperation. "We need the 500,000, or at least half, just to stall them." "I told you," I said. "No. You would let your parents be homeless?" Mom rolled down her car window and screamed. Her hair was messy, her eyes wild. "After everything we did for you? We raised you. We fed you. And then you cast me aside the moment I stopped being useful, I shouted back. You told my daughter to get out. You told me I was dead to you. Well, congratulations, Margaret. You got your wish. The son you're looking for doesn't live here. We will sue you, Caleb yelled, his face turning red. We'll sue you for defamation, for the emotional distress caused by your dog. We'll take you for everything you have. I smiled. It was the smile of a man holding a royal flush while his opponent holds a pair of twos. Go ahead, I said. But before you do, you should check your email, Caleb. Caleb froze. What? My lawyer, Andrew. You know him? Top of his class at Harvard? He sent you a formal demand letter about an hour ago. We are demanding repayment of the $58,420 you owe me, plus interest. You can't do that, Caleb stammered. Oh, I can. And I did. You have 30 days, Caleb. If the money isn't in my account, Andrew files the lawsuit. And since you're already under scrutiny for bank fraud, imagine what happens when the court starts digging into your finances. Imagine what the IRS will think about all those gifts you never declared. Caleb looked like he was going to throw up. Sarah grabbed his arm to steady herself. You're bluffing, Dad said, but his eyes were filled with fear. Try me, I said. You want to talk about family? Family pays their debts. Family doesn't steal. You have 30 days. Joshua, please. Dad's voice broke. He took a step forward, his hands out in a pleading gesture. We are desperate. We have nowhere to go. Bruno stood up and growled. It was a deep rumble of thunder. Dad stopped in his tracks. You have a $60,000 truck. I pointed to Caleb's vehicle. Sell it. You have a boat. Sell it. You have jewelry. Sell it. You have a house full of antique furniture. Sell it. You figure it out. Just like I had to figure it out when I was 22, and you wouldn't co-sign my student loan because you were saving money for Caleb's gap year in Europe. I hate you. Mom screamed from the car. I wish you were never born. The feeling is mutual regarding this conversation, I said. Now get off my property, or I release the dog. And this time, he won't just be eating turkey. It was a bluff. I would never let Bruno hurt anyone. But they didn't know that. They had seen what he was capable of. Caleb scrambled back to his truck. Sarah was already inside, sobbing. Dad stood there for one last second, looking at me. He looked for a trace of the obedient boy he had raised. He found only a stranger. He turned around, walked back to his Buick, and got in. I watched them reverse out of the driveway. I watched their taillights disappear down the street. I stood there in the cold for a long time. I needed to feel the chill. I needed to know I was awake. When I finally went back inside, Elena was waiting in the hallway. She didn't say anything. She just wrapped her arms around me and held me. It's done, I whispered. It's done, she agreed. The next few weeks were a blur of activity, but it was productive chaos. True to my word, I didn't lift a finger to help them. I heard through Aunt Clara, who called me in secret, that the fallout was catastrophic. Caleb tried to sell the truck, but he was underwater on the loan. He ended up getting a fraction of what it was worth. He had to go to a hard money lender, basically a loan shark with a storefront, to pay me back. He was terrified of my lawyer. On the 29th day, a wire transfer hit my account. $58,420. Not a penny of interest, but I didn't care. I had my principal back. But the house in Springfield was a different story. They couldn't save it. The bank wasn't interested in Caleb's excuses. They foreclosed. My parents were given an eviction notice. They had to pack up 40 years of hoarding and move into a 2-bedroom rental apartment on the bad side of town. I felt nothing. No joy, no sadness. Just a clinical acknowledgement of cause and effect. If you light a fire in your living room, your house burns down. It's simple physics. But the biggest change wasn't happening in Springfield. It was happening in our home. One night in late January, Elena and I were sitting at the dinner table. Lily was asleep. I don't want to live here anymore, Elena said suddenly. I looked up from my laptop. Here? In Boston. We're too close, she said. Every time a car drives by slowly, I tense up. I don't want Lily looking over her shoulder. I don't want to bump into your cousin Ryan at the grocery store. I nodded slowly. She was right. The physical proximity was a tether. As long as we were within driving distance, the ghost of my family would haunt us. Where do you want to go? I asked. Anywhere, she said. Somewhere warm. Somewhere they don't know. We pulled up a map. We looked at job listings. Since the pandemic, my entire team had gone remote. I could work from the moon as long as I had Wi-Fi. Elena was an ER doctor. She could find work anywhere in the country within a week. We settled on Austin, Texas. The decision was impulsive, terrifying, and absolutely perfect. We put our house on the market in February. It sold in 3 days. We started packing. There is something incredibly therapeutic about packing up a house. With every box I taped shut, I felt like I was sealing away a piece of the trauma. The old photo albums where I was always standing in the background while Caleb was front and center? Into the trash. The world's okayest brother mug Caleb had given me as a joke gift 5 years ago? Smash. Into the trash. The letters from my mother criticizing my career choices? Shredder. We kept what mattered. Lily's drawings. Our wedding photos. Bruno's favorite chewed-up toys. On the day we left, the moving truck was idling in the driveway. The house was empty. It echoed when I walked through it. I did a final walkthrough. I checked the closets, the cabinets. Nothing left behind. I walked out to the car. Elena was in the passenger seat, smiling. Lily was in the back, surrounded by pillows and iPads. Bruno had the entire trunk area of the SUV to himself, looking out the back window like a king surveying his kingdom. I took one last look at the Boston skyline. This city had been my home, but it had also been my prison. I put the car in drive. Ready for an adventure, Lil? I asked. Yeah, she cheered. Are there cowboys in Texas? I hope so. I laughed. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I just drove. Mile after mile, the weight lifted. New York passed. Then Pennsylvania. Then the open road. We were running away, yes. But we weren't running from something. We were running toward something. We were running toward peace. 2 years. It's hard to believe it's been 2 years since the turkey incident, as we now call it in our household. I'm sitting on the back porch of our new house in Austin. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of burnt orange and violet that you just don't get in New England. The air smells of barbecue smoke and jasmine. Lily is 11 now. She's in the yard, throwing a frisbee for Bruno. Bruno is older. His muzzle has gone gray, and he moves a little slower in the mornings. His hips bother him when it rains. But right now, he's bounding across the grass like a puppy, chasing that plastic disc with the same intensity he once had for a roasted bird. He catches it, trips over his own feet, and rolls in the grass, happy as a clam. Lily's laughter rings out, clear and unburdened. That sound. That is my victory. Life here is different. It's quiet in the way that matters. When my phone rings now, I don't flinch. I don't get that spike of cortisol. We've built a circle here. A real circle. We have neighbors who invite us over because they enjoy our company, not because they want a loan. We have friends who ask, "How are you?" and actually wait for the answer. And we have family. Elena's parents, Tom and Linda, moved down here about 6 months after we did. They bought a small condo 20 minutes away. They are over at least twice a week. Last Sunday we had a cookout. I watched Tom teaching Lily how to grill a burger. He was patient. He was kind. He listened to her ramble on about Minecraft for 20 minutes without checking his watch once. Linda was in the kitchen with Elena, helping her prep salads. I heard them laughing. That's when it hit me. This is what I was chasing for 40 years. This feeling of safety. This feeling of being enough. I had spent my whole life banging on a locked door, begging the people inside to love me. I never realized that the door wasn't locked to keep me out. It was locked because the house inside was empty. There was no love there to give. I stopped banging. I built my own house. As for the people I left behind, I don't ask about them. I don't look them up on Facebook. I don't Google their names. But information has a way of traveling. About 6 months ago, I got a letter. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting. It was Aunt Clara. I almost threw it away. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened it standing right here on this porch. It was a short letter. Clara wrote that she was doing well. She had moved into a senior living community in Florida and was finally away from the toxicity. Good for her. Then, she gave me the update I hadn't asked for, but needed to hear. Caleb and Sarah are divorced. Apparently, when the money ran out and the house was gone, the love didn't last long. Sarah took the kid and moved back in with her parents. She's suing Caleb for child support. But since he doesn't have a verifiable income, she's not getting much. Caleb is living in a basement apartment, working some commission-only sales job, still looking for his next big break, still blaming the world for his failures. And my parents? They are living in a small 2-bedroom apartment. Dad had to go back to work as a greeter at a hardware store to make ends meet because their Social Security doesn't cover the rent and their debts. Mom apparently spends her days complaining to anyone who will listen about her ungrateful son, who abandoned them and stole their grandchild. The vultures, the aunts and cousins, have scattered. Without the big house to host parties and the illusion of wealth, there was no carcass left to pick. They stopped visiting. I read the letter twice. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel a surge of, "I told you so." But I didn't. I felt pity. Not the kind of pity that makes you want to reach out and help. No, that part of me is dead and buried. It was the pity you feel when you see a character in a movie make the same bad choice over and over again until the credits roll. They chose money over family. They chose ego over love. And now they have neither money nor family. They are alone in a prison of their own making. I folded the letter and walked inside. I didn't hide it from Elena. I showed it to her. She read it, shrugged, and tossed it in the recycling bin. "Hamburgers are ready," she said. "Coming," I replied. That was it. That was the closure. A piece of paper in the recycling bin, sandwiched between a junk mail flyer and an empty cereal box. I walked back outside to call Lily for dinner. "Lily, dinner time. Coming, Dad," she yelled. "Come on, Bruno." She ran up the steps, breathless and sweating. She hugged me around the waist. "Dad." "Yeah, kiddo? Grandpa Tom said he's going to take me fishing next weekend. Can Bruno come?" "I don't see why not," I smiled. "Just don't let him eat the bait." "He won't," she giggled. "He's a good boy." She ran inside. Bruno trotted up the stairs, panting. He stopped in front of me and nudged my hand with his wet nose. I crouched down and looked into his eyes. Those big, brown, loyal eyes. "You really are a good boy," I whispered to him. "You saved us, you know that?" He licked my face, his tail thumping a rhythm against the deck. "People tell me I was brave for cutting them off. They tell me I was strong. But the truth is I was just tired. I was tired of drowning." I looked at the sunset one last time. The sky was a brilliant purple now. I thought about the man I was 2 years ago. The man shivering in the car, terrified of his mother's judgment. That man is gone. In his place is a father who knows that his job isn't to be a good son to abusers. His job is to be a shield for his daughter. I stood up, took a deep breath of the warm Texas air, and walked inside to have dinner with my family. My real family. The table was set. Not with fancy crystal or antique china. Just mismatched plates we bought at Target. There was no turkey, just burgers and potato salad. But the room was filled with laughter. It was filled with warmth. And most importantly, everyone sitting at that table wanted to be there. And for the record, Bruno got a burger. With cheese. Friends, thank you for walking this road with me. It wasn't an easy story to tell, but I shared it because I know I'm not the only one. If you take anything away from my experience, please let it be these 3 things. First, biology is not destiny. Just because someone shares your DNA doesn't mean they are entitled to your time, your money, or your mental health. Family is a title that is earned through love and respect, not granted by birth. Second, financial boundaries are essential. Money is often the weapon toxic families use to control you. They use guilt to open your wallet. Closing that wallet is often the first step to breaking the chain. Never set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. And finally, protect your peace. It is not selfish to walk away from people who hurt you. It is an act of survival. You have the right to be happy. You have the right to a home free of screaming and judgment. If the story resonated with you, if you've ever had to draw a hard line to save yourself, or if you just enjoyed seeing a bully get their comeuppance thanks to a hungry Rottweiler, I have one last request. Please, type the word good in the comments below. That single word tells me that you understand the value of self-respect. It tells me that you believe in breaking toxic cycles. And honestly, it tells me that we are going to be okay. Thank you for listening. Hug your kids. Hug your dogs. And remember, you are enough.